I am really pretty excited about this this topic today because I think that it is something that is going to change the world. I think there's no way to back out of it. And so I'd like to talk about the fact that quite a few of people our age, of the older generation, in particular Medicare agents, are choosing to opt out of AI, and I can understand why they do that. I'm hoping that we can have a conversation today that enables you to reposition it in your mind, to reframe it, to come to a little bit of different understanding of what's going on. At the beginning here, and by the way, I'd like to encourage you to ask questions. I really enjoyed the way that we were talking at the beginning. There was quite a bit of participation, and I'd like that to be going, because I don't want to be just preaching into the silence, if you will. I'm hoping that I can trigger some questions in your mind, and that you're going to be asking those questions or thinking about those questions. So today is a 2-hour CE. So we will be taking a break at the top of the hour. And then we'll come back. The first part of the hour is going to be theoretical, and then the second part of the hour is going to be more practical. The second hour is going to be more practical. We're going to be starting off here right after I do a little bit of introductory things. We're going to start off with the poll, and Morgan is going to talk about those things. We're going to be asking quite a few questions, about 8 over the next 2 hours. We have been encouraged to not ask questions at the end of a course, but to ask questions throughout the course. And so you're going to be receiving questions to answer throughout the course. Answering the questions is mandatory to receive credit for the CE, so we will be checking those answers. We will be closing the polling about 15 minutes after the close of the course. So let's say that we finish up at noon, we'll be closing it around 12:15. Hey, Tim, good to see you. I'd like to ask you to pay attention to the text in red. So you can actually see a screen right here where the text is in red. I think I'm going to turn off my camera so you don't see me looking back and forth between screens. So you can see that there is text in red here. So that means there's going to be, it turns out there's going to be 2 questions associated with this particular slide. And Morgan will explain that to you in just a minute. But I did want to try to set things up for you. And this may affect how you answer the questions. It doesn't have to. It could. I'll be interested in seeing if it does. So this course is about what people are calling generative AI, or Gen AI for short. And as we're going to be walking through this, trying to enable you to view it from a different perspective, I'd like to have you, or invite you, to engage in a thought experiment with me. I'd like you to allow me to walk you through your memories. But first, I'd like you to consider a proposition. And that is that every single one of you here was born a genius in one way or another. Each of you is able to do things and think of things in a way that nobody else can. And if we could figure out how to tap into that, each one of us would be better off. But then socialization came along, especially during primary and secondary school, and it pressured you to start repressing your own genius, to stop being curious, to stop asking questions about the things that interested you the most. And let me just explain this real quickly. So here are the events that persuaded you to repress yourself. When you asked questions as a child, the adults either did not understand the details of what you were asking, or they told you that it was not important and that they thought that you should think about something that they approved of. You know, don't And I think probably young people hear that about video games a lot now. You eventually stop thinking about or talking about something that you love very much. And that combination of social repression and self-repression changed who you are, changed your personality, and it changed everyone else too. Where they had been curious, they became apathetic. Where they had been adventurous, they became cautious of reprimand and ridicule. So, Gen AI is rapidly changing all those social dynamics. The way that you guys were raised, the way that your personalities formed and became what they became, that dynamic is going to be changing under the pressure or under the liberation that is Gen AI. And it is a double-edged sword. I'm going to mention this several times. So there is opportunity and there is chaos in this new technology that is coming. Most people tend to say, well, I'm either going to see the bad in it or I'm going to see the good in it. And I'm hoping that you guys can decide that you're going to see both and you're going to try to figure out the appropriate response to both of those. Whoever realizes that they can do this is going to have some type of advantage. Okay, so having said all that, having put that in context, let's talk a little bit about what Gen AI is. And you can see that one of the questions that we're going to ask you is, what is the definition of Gen AI? First of all, it's not regular AI. Regular AI started out as the ability to recognize patterns and then categorize things according to those patterns. And it's been around for a long time. So let me talk to you a little bit about some of the things that regular AI can do, and it's starting to affect you guys, right? So I'm anticipating, last year Aetna was negotiating with University of Utah Provider Network, and there was a great big conflict over the way Aetna was using AI to deny prior authorization requests. That is because one of the things that it can do is AI can take, say, X-rays, and it can take those X-rays and separate them into benign and malignant classes better than people can. And but all it's doing is it's separating those classes, right? It's not looking at the whole situation, which is where the providers and the insurance companies are at odds. It does facial recognition, right? It does sentiment analysis and written text. It can read ancient documents where the letters were destroyed by lava or fire or age, and it can make distinctions between the black on the black, and you're able to read texts that have not been legible for 2,000 years. It catches fraud in financial records because it sees patterns, and it can recognize that the patterns that are done, if the accounting is being legitimately done every single day, are different than the patterns that emerge if you are committing fraud in those financial records. It trains manufacturing robots to recognize the parts as they assemble products and equipment. So those applications have been around for quite a while. The Gen AI that we're going to be talking about today has only been around. It probably came into it really came into effect the tail end of 2022. I didn't actually catch on to it until January of 2023. So let me tell you about what generative AI is and how it's different. It generates new content, right? So regular AI looked at patterns and developed classes and classifications, and then so you fed that in, you fed the content in, and it analyzed the content, and it was able to come to conclusions about that content that you were not. Generative AI can do that, but then it does even more, and that is that it generates new content. It generates new writing, new speech, new images, new audio, new songs, new videos, and in some cases, new rationales by taking pieces of arguments from all sorts of different people and putting them together in new ways. So Gen AI is going to result in future generations being socialized differently than you guys are. That's a big deal, and it's one that you can probably help your grandchildren or your children or your neighbors or your friends go through that process right now if you can help them to re-perceive and understand what is going on. And I just realized I did not set my clock. Okay. So I'd like to offer some of the benefits of Gen AI, and these are going to be stated as generalities throughout the first half of the presentation where we're talking theoretically. Let me give you some real generalities here about what Gen AI can do for you. So first of all, it can answer nearly all the questions that you have ever had. If you can go back in time and you can remember those repressed questions, and if you can figure out how to ask those questions in such a way that the Gen AI service is going to generate responses that you personally find useful and satisfying. I also believe that most of you know today that Gen AI platforms hallucinate, which is the very rough equivalent of human lying. So that means that you can either reject all of Gen AI outright, or you can put this flaw into an appropriate category that complicates your dealing with it a little bit, just as you already have to complicate your dealing with people who, and you probably already know this, who typically lie at least 1 to 2 times a day. Most people are lying 1 to 2 times a day to make life easier, to sort of, some people lie a lot more than that, and it's more narcissistic. But anyway, you already have to deal with information that's coming to you, meaning that's coming to you, where some of it's true and some of it's not true. Here, you're actually doing it with a machine that is not trying to lie to you, and we're going to go over a little bit how it gets confused, and it hallucinates, and it tells you things thinking that they're true when they are actually not true. Sometimes you can recognize it right off and you go, well, that's a stupid little device. Sometimes you don't know it, and it's when you don't know it that it can be a challenge. So we're going to be hopefully talking about that today. I would like to also point out something here. Both humans and Gen AI exhibit another flaw, and it's one that we need to become more aware of, because right now we live in a society that is more committed to oversimplifications, I think, than any society that has ever been alive. I think it's a recognition on our parts that we live in more complex times and more complex situations than other people. So we're starting to engage in situations where we just don't have time or inclination to talk about everything that is relevant to the situation. And so we make these great oversimplifications, and that is actually contributing to the complexity rather than simplifying it, as we all hope that it will. Now, one of the things that we're going to be able to see with AI, and you can become one of these people, or you can become, what's the right word here, a victim of what they're saying. But people are going to be able to start crafting better and better arguments to explain the decisions that they have made in the past, or the decisions that they're making now, or the ones they're going to make in the future. And anytime you're in a high-stakes situation, you can go and have a conversation, not just input it the way you would at the search engine. One of the points I'm going to be making is that people don't understand the benefit of AI because they keep thinking that they use it the same way that they've used search engines. And it's quite different, and we're going to be going over that today. There's an overlap, but really the fundamentals that you can't see are quite different. And if you understand those fundamentals, then things are going to change. So people can now engage with all sorts of complex information that they either chose to deliberately avoid in the past or they were unable to understand. So this is my last introductory thought. With the power of these apparatuses to answer just about any of your questions, you have to realize that, and you realize that that it's a sword that cuts both ways, just as every technology has been. And you're going to find that you can justify your past decisions and your current decisions and your future decisions with the plausibility and persuasiveness that you've never achieved before. It is going to lead people to try to take advantage of this and to abuse this power. And here's the kicker. Not only will you be able to justify your decisions and justify what you're thinking and what you want to do, everybody else will be able to use it in the same way. And they're going to justify their reasoning and they're going to justify their decisions. We already live in a society that is more prone to blaming than just about any society. Now, it's because we have publication. We can all I think in the past, everyone blamed everybody else for everything, but you weren't able to publish it on the social media platforms the way you can now. But now you can blame everybody for all the pain that you're suffering, and everybody's doing that. And so what we're going to see, and this is the bad side of the sword, we're going to see an increase in blaming. It's going to become more persuasive. It's going to become more painful. But we're also going to be seeing people who are coming up with new defenses, new ways of explaining themselves, new ways of repositioning it. So what we're going to see happening here is a growth in complexity, and it's going to keep on going more than it has gone in the past. Okay, so that's enough of the presentation. If I could have yeah, Gene, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when computers first became common, somebody said to me, garbage in, garbage out. And I think AI may have improved that situation, but it will always be that way to a certain extent. Recently, I was talking to a friend of mine who I was saying, well, I've seen this and this happen on AI. And his response was, well, we can teach it to learn the proper thing. We can train it to say certain words correctly or have certain ideas. And so the thought that occurred to me is, if you've got a Stephen Hawking's or somebody like that is a great physicist and knows all about the universe, and then I ask it a question, well, what was the universe like before the Big Bang? And if nobody's ever answered that question, AI is not going to know the answer to it because it hasn't been trained on that yet. So this is not always going to give us everything, but it has the capability of rationalizing thousands and thousands of responses and coming up with a solution that it believes to be the most correct.
Thank you, Gene. I think you're on. It's certainly factors that we need to look at. So Morgan is going to talk to us a little bit about these polls and question instructions today. Morgan, can you take it away?
Yes. Okay, so this time we're doing something a little bit different, where we're doing the questions, the CE questions in the actual presentation. So you need to make sure that you answer all of these. As we go, when there is going to be red text on the slide, make sure to pay attention to the red text, and I will be launching the corresponding question for that slide. The polls will all be open until the end of the call for 15 minutes. So just make sure that you answer all of the questions, and if you have any questions about it, let me know, and you can ask in the chat as well. But these are the instructions. We're going to go over the instructions once right now, and then we'll go over them again at the end. But like I said, as we go, we'll have questions. So make sure that you're paying attention to the red text and just the presentation in general. So I'm going to launch one, and then I'd like everyone to try and answer it. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on the pop-up on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen that says a new poll has been launched in order to answer the question. So I'm going to do that now. And if you, for whatever reason, if you accidentally miss that, you're like, oh, dang, I didn't catch that poll, you can go down to the bottom. In the right-hand corner, there's that little activities button with the triangle, square, and the circle. You just click on that. And from there, you'll click on the button that says poll. And then you can answer the poll questions. So like I said, as we go, I'm going to be launching the poll questions. So at the end, there will be all of the polls. So if you missed any, you can go ahead and answer them throughout the call at any time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like we have about 10 people who have voted. So we have about 4 people still. Oh, okay, 2 more people, 1 person.
Do we click on the little circle that says, what does that say? Poly polls?
Yes.
Let me check and see what you're.
So I popped up a page that says activities, and the top 3 things say read meeting something.
Oh, you'll scroll down a little bit. It says under break room. So there's breakout rooms, and then underneath that says polls, and that's where the one you want to click on.
Oh, I see. I see.
So Morgan, do we just leave that screen up all the time then?
You can. It's totally up to you. I'll kind of try and chime in a little bit here and there and say, hey, just a reminder that a poll popped up. But it's whatever you'd like to do.
Because it looks like.
But every time that there is a new, oh, sorry.
Oh, this says it looks like you click on polls, answer the question, and then click back, and it takes you back to this screen. So would it make sense just to leave this screen up then?
Yeah, like I'm going to actually launch another one. So since we've all kind of tried that and it looks like it worked and looks like everybody answered, I'm going to launch another one, and I want everyone to make sure this is going to be based off of slide number 1. So we will launch this one, and as you can see, it'll pop up in the bottom right-hand corner again. So each time I launch one, it will pop up there. So you can do it however you would like.
So have you launched the second question?
I just did.
Okay. And by the way, everybody, we're learning how to do this ourselves the first time. So I still have the first question up.
No, I didn't see it.
Do I have?
If you're on the polls,
Oh, you scroll down.
Yeah,
Okay,
if you are on poll number 1, it should say, I actually don't know if it says this or not, but there will be 8 polls. So there's the first one, and then if you scroll down a little bit, it should show the second one.
Okay.
Okay, so 2 of 2, and then a down arrow.
Okay.
So I know this is a little bit new, so I hope everybody can, work it out pretty well, but let me know if you have any questions. But like I said, at the end of the call as well, we'll go over the poll instructions. So in case you missed anything or confused by it by any means, we can go over that again, and we'll leave it up for 15 minutes to make sure everybody has an answer to answer all the questions, or a chance to answer.
Looks like all answers are the right answer.
It's not going to tell you which one is the correct answer.
Okay, we're going to press on now. This is, I am going to ask you to do something outside of the polls now. So I'd like you to click the icon that shows sort of writing It's right next to the activities icon down in the bottom right-hand corner. And there's a square with lines on it. It's so that you can enter stuff into the comment section. Thanks, Tim. And what I would like you to do is I'd like you to sort of name the most admirable, intelligent person that you know. So Gene mentioned Stephen Hawking a second ago, and I put some other names of people who are really smart, who've done a lot of stuff in world history up here on the screen, just to sort of prime the pump. But would you guys mind? So I see Alexia has put in Leonardo. Would you guys mind just putting in, Tim just put in Ben Franklin? Would you just mind putting in those people? And if you do, what I would like to suggest is one of the things you can do is you can consider these large language modules, these things that we're looking at here. Elon Musk, cool. You can actually, in your imagination, you consider that when you're talking with these large language modules, if you can figure out how to ask them a question so that it gives you a good answer, it's going to be like talking with the smartest person that you know, this person that you admire the most. And you can imagine that as having someone that you can go to. Let's say your very best friend is one of these polymaths. You're going to be able to go to this polymath and have a conversation about anything with these guys. Anyway, so I just wanted you to think about that. Okay, so we're going to start trying to reframe perceptions by talking a little bit of theory now. And again, you guys can jump in and you can say that, you know, you think I'm up in the night here or whatever it is. Notice I've got a little red box here with the word vacuum in it. That is to remind me that there's going to be a third question now launched. Morgan's going to be launching a third question. But you're going to be answering the question based on its absence from the screen here. So that's what you're going to, that's what the word vacuum is referring to. Okay, so I'd like to start off here by trying to deconstruct or dissect why people are having a difficult time making a distinction between current technology and the technology that we have been using up until 2023, when all of these things started to take over the world. I'd like you to look at that first bullet point. Well, the sub bullet point: the Medicare agents conceive of Gen AI as if it were a search engine. I think that most people believe that they want these things to work just as a search engine, and that it's going to work better than a search engine. And it doesn't work the same way as the search engine, and so usually they're disappointed with what happens when they interact with the AI, because their expectations were informed by that. The reason it doesn't work is because, and so this is going to be theoretical, and I hope you understand this, but these Gen AI are more powerful because they work by establishing a shared sense of relevance between the large language module and the human user. That's not the way search engines work, right? Search engines just try to extract the keywords out of what you typed in, and then they would search for documents that contain those keywords. There was no attempt to try to figure out what you were thinking was relevant to the situation, and then to go out onto the internet and find relevant responses or answers to what you're asking, regardless of how it is expressed, and then bring it back to you and give it to you in a way that you're going to find relevant. So that's one of the things that is going on here. So think about this for a second, right? By writing a prompt, and you want give it kind of a long prompt, right? You don't want to write a sentence or two. You want to write a paragraph. And by writing this prompt, you're enabling the machine to learn your personal sense of situational relevance so that it can then go out and search all of human knowledge on your behalf for the information that will empower you to recognize that it's relevant when you get the answer back. And it should make the future more favorable than it otherwise would have been if you hadn't received that relevant knowledge back. I wish I could reach into each of you and kind of, you know, squeeze your hand and say, okay, that's really an important point that we just made. These things are trying to understand completely what your sense of relevance is. And so the more words that you use in complete sentences, because it's determining what is relevant from how the sentences and the words are interconnected grammatically and all of those other ways. It's going through and it's calculating a sense of relevance, what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And it's going out, finding that relevance, however it's expressed, and bringing it and giving it back to you. And if you've done a good job of enabling it to discern what you think is relevant in your current situation, you're going to get an answer back that you think is relevant. If you get an answer back that is not relevant, that is not complete, that is not satisfying, it's because you haven't enabled this robot, this servant, to go out and understand your sense of relevance and go out and get the information that you need and bring it back to you.
Question. Isn't there a danger in the Medicare field of using this for any kind of to generate any kind of communication with your clients, of running afoul of CMS, of unapproved communications and marketing materials, etc.?
Yes, and we will be addressing that. So no matter what you do, you can use, so this stuff is more like using it to brainstorm and come up with ideas. But then once you come up with something that you think is going to be appropriate and is going to be fruitful, then you still have to take and put it through the lens of compliance and everything. And by the way, you can ask this thing, you can say to the machine here, you can say, I need to make sure this thing is compliant according to the, and you can actually give it the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 42, and it will be able to look at that stuff and do it. Now, I haven't actually done this. I just know that it's supposed to be able to do that. Regardless, you'll still have to run it through. You'll still have to run it through your own mind, or my mind, or whatever it is, to make sure that what we're doing is compliant. I hope that answered your question, Chuck. So here are some of the reasons that Medicare agents are saying that they do not want to engage with Gen AI, right? So they're conceiving it as a search engine, right? They're trying to use it as keyword search. They're not understanding that it is trying to come up with its own judgment of what that individual person in that unique situation thinks is relevant. And then it's going out and looking for that. AI developers have not laid out the benefits in an intelligent. I'm not going to read all these things to you. Hopefully you guys can see these things. I'm just going to let you look at it for just a second here. And if anything, if you would like me to elaborate on any of these things, just let me know. I'm certainly willing to elaborate on them. Anyway, let me tell you from conversations that I have had with Medicare agents, as I'm trying to encourage them to see what this can do, that this can do things. Let me just tell you some of the things that agents have said to me. AI technology should be well established and widely used by most other agents before I'll even consider using it. Okay, so these people are a little bit resistant, but not not fanatically resistant. The technology should work so well that I suffer no cost like frustration and waste of time. I want my satisfaction guaranteed before I consider using it. Hallucinations must be eliminated so that reliability and utility are assured over the long run. I cannot risk losses of work, effort, time, or frustration, so I need strong user testimonies that all bugs and all flaws have been eliminated. I am under no obligation to do anything until there is strong pressure from clients, carriers, regulators, or other business realities to engage with AI reinforced services. Okay, let me just give you a few more, and these people are a little bit more adamant in their resistance. The technology must be an absolute necessity, a standard in the economy before I will consider using it. Climbing the learning curve of Gen AI must be clearly the lowest risk investment of my time and attention. Unless I see no alternative to adoption to stay in business, I will not consider it. And I will not cave in until irresistible external pressures compel me to adopt it. Okay, I'm hoping that you can understand, and you probably can relate to their desires and their reasoning, right? I know that I certainly can. And I know I've been in situations where I felt that same way. But can you imagine an athlete or an entrepreneur making their decisions based on such thinking? How successful do you think they're going to be if they think that way? Okay. Let's just talk a little bit here about
Doug, can I ask a question real quickly?
Sure.
Before you start on this.
Yeah.
Can you explain what a chatbot is to me? Because I don't really think I know what a chatbot is.
Okay. I have you used ChatGPT? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. So let's talk. Okay. Thank you very much. So a chatbot is it's the what's the right word? It's the popular term for what's called a large language module. So this is the generative. A chatbot is the generative AI, Alexius. So it's when you're asking the chatbot or the generative AI or the large language module, those are all sort of equivalent terms, that it is the chatbot that's trying to read what you think is relevant to a situation. And it's the chatbot that's going out and searching through all the knowledge that it has and then trying to craft an answer and come back and give it to you however you do it. These chatbots are the things that generate the text, that generate the voice, that generate the pictures, that generate the video, that generate the songs. That's what a chatbot is. Does that make sense, Alexius?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Gene.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, you've probably used it and didn't realize it. Maybe you've gone online to try to get a new phone service and a little box pops up and starts asking you questions and you try to respond to those questions. But one of the things I wanted to point out is chatbots oftentimes are programmed specifically for the information of that particular usage. So if you're looking for phone service and then you ask it, how far is it to China? It probably isn't going to be able to answer that question because it's not been programmed for that particular set of parameters.
Thank you, Gene. And you're right. I have seen that. I don't use it because when I want to do something, I want to talk to a human being. And I know that's not a human being. So thank you. But you're right. I do know what it is.
So there are like 7 different levels of technology of chatbots, and chatbots have been around for decades doing the stuff that Gene does. And so when people are talking about these large language modules, they often say chatbot because it's like that the stuff that Gene said, where you've put into it and you say, okay, here's the possible questions and here are all the answers that you can do. Those chat bots are really dumb compared to the chat bots that we're having now that are connected to all of the knowledge that the world has ever had, right? With these new ones, you can go in and you can say, I'd like to ask you a question and I'd like you to answer it for me just the way that Aristotle would, or just the way Steve Jobs would, or just the way that Bill Gates would, and it will do it. It'll go out, get their answers and bring them back, and you can have a conversation with them as Aristotle or as Thomas Jefferson or as Ben Franklin or as, I mean, this stuff is amazing.
Or even in a particular language.
Yes, and it translates between all the different languages, and it can do it in real time. Okay, so I was making the assumption, and Alexius, I appreciate your setting me straight, that some of the terminology that I'm going to be using was already known. And so the terms that I'm using on this page are terms that I have not used in prior discussions on AI. And you know, since the beginning of 2024, we have had about 3 or 4 different discussions on this, because our uplines and the carriers and the regulators all think that this is important, all think it's going to change everything. So if they think it's going to change everything, right? And let me just talk a little bit about some of these new terms that you may be hearing. I know when I'm on social media, I see these terms all the time, but it probably knows my viewing habits. So you may be hearing about something that are called AI agents or agentic workflows. You can mock me, Tim, if you want. I'll explain what I mean by just a sec. So these, you're going to be able to go in as a Medicare agent. And by the way, the technology's here. They haven't really released it. Oh, okay, thanks. This technology is working now. The guys who are making this available are a little afraid of releasing it to the public. And so they're making it so you have to know quite a bit of stuff before you can actually use these things. And the large companies like OpenAI and Microsoft and Apple and Google and Anthropic and some of the other ones, and Amazon that are out there, and Meta that are out, all of these companies now are pursuing it. Funny. Downey chick, yeah, I appreciate that comment. These things are available. And what these full-fledged things, if you're a Medicare agent, you will be able to, and let's say this is going to be next year, okay? There's a possibility it will be next year, just depending on how many brakes people still keep putting on the technology. So the capabilities, the technological capabilities are available now. It's just people are having a hard time coming to an agreement on what should be released, the timing it should be released, what the guardrails are. Sort of in keeping with what Chuck was talking about a few minutes ago. There are full-fledged agentic workflows or AI agents, and this is a machine. This is the machine you're talking to. Let's call him Fred. You'll be able, as a Medicare agent, to say, Fred, I want you to look up all the clients in my book of business, and it's July 1st. I'd like you to reach out to all of them, and I want you to use phone, I want you to use text message, I want you to use email and snail mail if you have to. I want you to tell them it's going to be a tough year this year because Medicare is changing a lot, and that you want to get a jump on trying to understand what their needs are going to be. So would you please collect in a secure way their prescriptions, how they've changed, who their providers are, make sure that we've got all the providers, see if anything has changed, what's happening with their health conditions and who their pharmacies are. And then find out, call them up, talk with them, find out if they want to meet with me face to face or by phone or virtually, and keep track of it. And if they do want to meet, we're going to have to get a scope of appointment, get that scope of appointment, put it into their folder. And then please synopsize all this stuff. Let me know what you're doing and give me reports, let's say every other day on the progress that you're making. And this thing is going to go off and do it for you. Okay. It's going to be able to open any app that's on your computer, any app that's on your phone, any app that's out there on the internet. And it's going to be able to put all these things together and create the workflows that you've asked it to do just by saying what I said. And it's going to be able to figure out how to get the APIs to work and how to communicate with these other programs that act more like the programs you're used to, where 2 + 2 was always 4. That's what I meant by hard-coded outputs here. Now let me talk about the downy chicks here. Because all of these companies are hesitant to release this full power and put it in the hands of everybody, they're coming up with not full-fledged, when I say full-fledged, that's when a chick actually gets its wings and it's able to flap the wings and they can actually start flying. Downy chicks can't fly. They don't have any flight feathers. But there are things that you can do right now to get these chatbots or these large language modules or these LLMs to almost act as if they can do all of these things right now. And we're going to be talking about a little of those. This next thing, I've got some asterisks here by the term relevance listing. So let me just explain quickly what I mean here. What I'm going to try to say is, before you go and create a prompt in one of these LLMs, like Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, what is the minimum list of concepts that I would like to see in the response that comes back from the large language module? In other words, how are you going to judge whether it gave you a good answer or didn't give you a good answer? If you know all of the things that you want, all of the concepts that you want to have, though you don't know how they're organized, you don't know the details and everything, but you know that it has to contain certain concepts in order for you to trust it, you need to figure out a way to list all of those concepts in the prompt, in the instructions that you give it. Okay. And you can ask for a step-by-step substantiation of the important information that it gives back to you. For example, you could say, when you're reaching out to all of my clients and you're setting up a process for me to do this, I want you to relate the process for me and tell me why you have created those steps in that process and why you didn't create other steps. I want you to give me the logic. Okay. LLM, we have gone over that. Here's a new term, and I just came across this term. It seems to have taken off over the last two or three weeks, and that's the word shots. So when it's sort of like when you go into a search engine and you type in your query, and then you push it, and it goes out and it's search, and it comes back with the return. That's a shot. So in a large language module, you type in what you want it to give you, and it goes out and then it comes back. That's a shot. I think the notion is it's sort of like shooting a basketball. Sometimes you're going to miss, sometimes you're going to make it, sometimes you're going to get what you want, sometimes you're not going to get what you want. And so every time you talk, you get, it's a shot. So there's something that's coming out now. It's called a zero shot. And most of the Medicare agents that I have worked with and everything are doing what just over the last 2 weeks is now called a zero shot. You actually ask the LLM to do something for you. You ask it in one sentence, or you ask it in a phrase, just the way that you did with the search engine, and it comes back. You gave it baby food, and it gives you baby food back, or as Gene says, garbage in, garbage out. So a zero shot is a poor shot. It's a shot that doesn't have any chance of winning, of giving you what you want, because you didn't give it enough context. You didn't give it enough meaning to actually determine what you think is relevant in the current situation. And so it cannot go out and use its understanding of your sense of relevance in order to bring that information back to you. So a zero shot has no examples, no procedures, you don't give it your purpose. You don't tell it the context that you're doing it for. There's nothing for it to base the relevance on as it's trying to act on your behalf. And I'm just going to, I just threw these other things in here. These are some alternatives that people are talking about chain of thought. So a chain of thought is you can actually, and this goes back to the Downey Chicks agentic workflows. A chain of thought is, and let's say that your LLM is Fred. You say, Fred, I'd like you to do step 1, and then when you finish step 1, I'd like you to do step 2, and then I'd like you to do step 3, and like you to do step 4. You actually say that you're going to do it. Now, all of these things are also, and I'm moving to the next word here, iterate. That's the chain of thought, that stepping through, dear Fred, think about it in this order. Iterate is something that computers do, and you simply say, I don't want you to rush to give me your answer. I want you to review it 2 times and see if you can improve it 2 or 3 times before you actually give it to me. Now, this means that it may take, instead of getting your answer back in 30 seconds or 45 seconds, you're going to get your answer back in 2 or 3 minutes. But it's a way of sort of minimizing the problem with the hallucinations. You can also ask it to play in a role. So you can say, I want you to act as an accountant, or I want you to act as an attorney. I want you to act as a scrupulously honest salesperson. These language modules right now are passing, they just test them, and so they feed in, say, the GMAT and the LSAT and the MCAT, and these language modules are acing all of these things, right? So you can actually say, I want you to act as an accountant, and when you say that, it's going to give preference to accounting documentation in formulating its response to you. Or if you say, I want to understand wills and trusts in the state of Utah, so act as an attorney who specializes in that, it's going to go out and look at those documents in preference before it answers you, if that makes sense. Always state your purpose. That purpose is the number one thing that the system needs to understand what is relevant to you in the particular situation. Because relevance is always defined in relationship to your purpose or to your desires or your motives, right? So that needs to be made clear. And then you can ask it to provide you some measurements of quality if you want to. I've had various results on that. Anyway, I'm hoping that is good. Let me just look at my time. Oh my goodness. Okay, I am taking far too long here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come out, we're going to cut out some of the practical stuff at the end. And I'm going to say, would you guys please contact me, and we'll go over the practical stuff if this is meaningful and interesting to you. So I am going to take, actually, what I would like to do here is I would like to take a 5-minute break. Can we take a 5-minute break and then have everybody come back and in 5 minutes? So let's say 11 o'clock. See you at 11. Okay. We are back. Hopefully everybody did the important things during the break. I'm going to try to go through this rather quickly here. This is sort of getting into the practical possibilities. Let me just tell you some of the things that I've used, these artificial intelligence chatbots for, that I've never been able to do this stuff in the past. And you can use YouTube to do things, but if you're looking for a sense of relevance, YouTube is not as efficient as you would like it to be. One of the things that these LLMs do is they make it so that you get just the information that you need, and it's organized just as you think is relevant for that particular situation. So I've used this to do home repairs. I tore up my patio to try to fix a leak where rainwater, groundwater was going into my window well. I've done it for car repairs. I've done it for computer issues. One of the things that's really nice is I'm able to think of things, but I don't know the names for things. So I would have a very hard time looking it up on a search engine. But I can actually say, okay, here's what I'm thinking about, and I use it for this, and I use it for that, and this is what it looks like, and it's made out of this and everything. And it's able to come up with the stuff that I'm looking for. You can have it format information for you. You have a printout that comes out of your CRM on your book of business, and it's just commas and everything, and it just runs on and on. You can say, please format this and put it into nice columns and nice categories, and it will do it for you. You can use it for brainstorming. And I know this will take a while to figure out how to do it, but you can carry on conversations. You ask a question of it, it gives you a response. You look at the response it gave you and you say, well, that's kind of insufficient. So I'm going to pretend like it's Leonardo or Thomas Jefferson or Galileo or whoever. And I'm going to try to give them a better understanding of what I'm thinking so that they can bring their brilliance to my issue. And you have this going back and forth. Most of these things are going to take 2 to 5 shots before you get the answer that you're looking for. So you cannot treat it like a search engine. You put it in there, and if you're unhappy with it, you move on to something else. Here you have a conversation with it just like you would a person. It can do psychological and social counseling, right? You're having a hard time with your kids or your grandkids, so you can have a conversation, describe what's going on at them, try to get so that it can help you empathize with them a little bit more. These things really excel at synopsizing and shortening, lengthening information, or making really complicated words so that they're not so big. And I'm going to talk about that and its ability to help you deal with complexity, with the complexity of Medicare, because seniors think that the number one problem from their perspective is that Medicare is too complex. Shopping, you can ask it for stuff like what are the best refrigerators or anything like that, and it's going to go out and it's going to look at everything, and it's going to come back and tell you stuff without having to pay for services that do this. Developing new games, new recipes. One of the things that you can do with these large language modules is you can take a picture of the inside of your fridge and you can say, tell me a meal that I could make with the stuff that's in my fridge right now. Okay. This is where I thought that we were going to be before the hour and the break. This right now is sort of the theoretical center of this presentation. And I see Morgan has just put up another question. So there are several ideas here that encapsulate all the ideas that we've discussed up to this particular point, and the ideas that we're going to be discussing going forward. Anyway, so I'd like to present these ideas as generalities. And the reason I want to do that is because I want you guys to use your own genius. And I know that it's in there because I've talked with all of you. And I want you to figure out how to instantiate these things to your own benefit. So I am talking deliberately in generalities. And if you would like to down the road, I'm certainly willing to talk to you about specifics. And the specifics that you and I come up with belong to you. I will not share them with anybody else. The goal is to try to give you a framework for competitive advantage that you come up with and that you don't have to share with anybody else. So let's take a look at let's take a look at these 4 logical steps here, because they're going to help me say some things here. And this is a reframing of your job. It's a reframing that takes advantage of, I know that I've had conversations with some of you about the role of complexity in Medicare in the past. And this is tying into that, because now for the very first time, we have a technology that enables us to address head-on the complexity that is overwhelming society, and with which society is responding with oversimplifications, which are actually making the complexity worse, right? So now we have a genuine solution if you know and you can figure out how to use it. So there was a marketing survey that came out, it's been about 5 years ago. And it said that your clients find Medicare so complex that they would prefer to have a root canal or a colonoscopy rather than to go through AEP each year. That's quite something. And before COVID, we at Stonehill, we were sort of trying to investigate this and figure out some of the things that we could do. And so in various group settings, we took surveys of agents and their judgment of certain things. So it's, take it for what it's worth. I think that almost everybody would agree that most written communication on the topic of Medicare fails. The surveys that we did with our agent lead us to believe that it fails 85 to 99% of the time. That means that written communication on Medicare succeeds 1 to 15% of the time, and the rest of the time it fails. Now, failed communication is always, and I'm going to call it here, I'm on bullet point number 2, an incompatible frame of reference between the authors and the recipients. They're just looking at the situation differently. Their definitions of what's relevant is incompatible. And how do you take and you heal that? Well, the way that you heal that is with communication. But if communication is only succeeding 1 to 15% of the time, it's not being healed. And that's currently the situation that we are in. Now, carriers were picking up on this problem with complexity, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. They started coming out with advertising 5 years ago. Maybe some of you remember some of the United Healthcare. They were sort of the leader in this, trying to address the complexity of Medicare, and that they would help you go through it. They did some business process re-engineering. They tried to make everything work. I'm just reading your comment. I don't know if you all saw that comment. I imagine you did. I don't know what will help CMS. We can talk about that later. But the carriers went through all this effort to try to simplify Medicare, and it failed. It didn't work. And up to that particular point, the way I read the carriers, especially some of the largest carriers, they were trying to find a way to cut out the independent channel, cut us guys out of the system. And it's when the carrier's attempts to really create simplification, when that failed, they realized that they needed the independent channel. So they're no longer trying to get rid of you guys. And they're even doing everything that they can to nurture you guys and to keep you in, even though CMS is putting a lot of pressure on our jobs and everything here in 2024 and 2025 to try to get us to be good corporate citizens, I guess is a good way to put it. So what's happening right now is the carriers are actually in their own minds, and they may not state it this way, this is my interpretation of what's going on, but they're actually paying for you to manage complexity, the complexity of your clients and of their clients. That complexity can be managed best by one-on-one conversations, where you're able to get into the mind of the person who's asking the questions and who's suffering from the complexity, and you're able to see what's relevant to them and why they're concerned. And then your mind is able to construct an answer that's based on trying to give them an answer that they're going to find relevant. And that particular task is what the large carriers with their business processes and their decision and their corporate decision making just couldn't manage. And that's why you guys have become so important. That's why they're no longer trying to replace you with ICAs or with anything else. It's because you guys are able to do things that the corporate communications people cannot do. And it's also why they're defending you in this climate that we're in right now. So I'd like to suggest a couple ways now. So let's talk about well, I missed bullet 4, which is what ties everything together here. AI can now help you mend the incompatibility and the complexity between the recipients and the author's frames of reference. A frame of reference, I chose that because almost always those are different from each other, but it could be perspective or viewpoint or you know, any of those words along that line. That's what I mean by the term frame of reference. We can now use AI to try to heal or mend the incompatibility between individuals that are talking, or between an individual who's trying to get a group message out to people. And what I'm going to try to suggest here is that you try to get a group message out to your clients or to your prospects that take a fundamentally different strategy than you have in the past, and you'll be able to craft that strategy by using Ben Franklin or Thomas Jefferson or Galileo or some of the other polymaths that you guys listed a little bit earlier. So here, let me just talk a little bit about the implications of these 4 steps of logic here, which is that much complexity now can be managed that could not be managed in the past. So Gen AI can help you figure out how to genuinely simplify complex Medicare information. And I would like to think that the best way to do this is in your self-promotion rather than in promotion of the products that you sell. Now, that may surprise some of you. Okay, so Chuck, I'm actually addressing that right now.
Okay.
I'm going. So if you create new Medicare marketing, right, it has to meet the definition of marketing that Medicare has put out. And if it does meet the definition of marketing that Medicare puts out, then you have to actually submit it to Medicare, their HPMS database, and you have to be issued what is called an SMID. It's a little code that lets them track all of the Medicare marketing information in the country. And if they come across something that they see as non-compliant, they can take that SMID and they can track you down and they can know exactly who you are. To meet the definition of marketing, you have to be talking about Medicare products. You have to talk about a plan, you have to talk about benefits, you have to talk about costs. You have to talk about specific things about the Medicare plans. If you do not talk, or you're trying to attract readers' attention to either a plan or a group of plans and get them to change their mind about those plans, right? That's the definition of marketing. But if you're marketing yourself, it becomes not the kind of marketing that you need to check in with and get an SMID from Medicare, from CMS with. If you're marketing yourself and you're not talking about plan benefits, it's not considered formal marketing. It's not considered, it's not even considered, it's not even considered marketing, even though you're marketing yourself, even though you're marketing your business, even though you're marketing your service. And I think where I'm going right now is that if complexity is the thing that your prospects and your clients are most put off by and find to be the biggest problem, then the plan types and the plan benefits and the plan costs are not the thing that you want to be talking about anyway. Did that make sense to everybody? Okay. This AI can also become a productivity multiplier by acting as an agent, the way that I talked about a few minutes ago. So let me suggest a process here that you can use to become more competitive. And again, this is a generic thing that I'd like you to think about. Because I'd like you to figure out how to do it in a way that is unique to you and that you can keep, play close to your vest. So that is interview your clients. You probably just a sec. Okay, so Chuck, what I'm trying to do is and this little process I'm going to be mentioning here is to try to enable your prospects and your clients to see that you're going to be able to help them address the complexity that they find in the Medicare system. So if you mention products, if you mention how much does it cost to go to your general practitioner, how much does it cost to go to a specialist, what's the inpatient, right? You are actually increasing the complexity that they're having to deal with. And so we need to figure out how to talk to them in such a way that they see that you're going to be a way of simplifying all of that stuff and making all that stuff that they find complex, that you're going to make it so that they don't have to dread AEP every year. They don't have to dread initial enrollment the way that they do every year. I hope that makes sense. So here's a process that I would like to suggest that you do. You select some of your clients, and then you have a meeting with them. And you try to capture their understanding of Medicare and the vocabulary that they're using for Medicare. You don't try to correct their vocabulary. You just listen and you try to figure out how they're using words, because those words are actually indications of what their frame of reference is. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to heal or mend the disparities between your frame of reference as an expert agent who is understanding what CMS wants and what the carriers want, because you have to go through product training every year. You have to go through AHIP every year. You have to go through these CE courses every year. So you're an expert and you understand things from an expert frame of reference. They are not experts They don't understand it from an expert frame of reference, and their non-expert frames of references are all over the map. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a good sampling of what is all over the map, all of these frames of reference that are all over the map. Then when you do that, make a list of the vocabulary, because it will show you what's missing from what they are thinking about. It will show you what they misunderstand. You'll be able to have some things, and you don't have to do great analysis of this, because you're going to have the large language module do the great analysis for you, right? You're going to have its intrinsic capabilities save you time, save you effort, save you frustration, save you analysis, in order to figure out how to simplify your messages to individuals, or if you come up with marketing materials that don't have to be that don't have to run through the carriers and don't have to run through CMS. Hopefully that's going to reduce your frustration and increase the abilities that you have to get new prospects and new clients. So you now take those lists and you feed your clients' views into the large language module, along with your initial critique of what you think is incomplete about their understanding, and you point out to the large language module how they're using words incorrectly. And you try to either tell the large language module to look at the regulations for Medicare, or you input those regulations yourself, so that it has that as part of the relevant context that it's going to need to do a good job. And then you ask the large language model to develop vocabulary and reasoning that will enable you to lead someone with the unexpert frame of reference to understand someone who is talking in and from an expert frame of reference. I hope that makes sense. I think it's going to take about 5 to 20 shots before you're satisfied with the process, with the things that you're coming out. So you're going to put in your first shot. You're going to make it as complete as you can. The language module, let's say Fred is going to respond to you. You're going to look at Fred and say, well, Fred didn't understand this, or Fred didn't understand that. You're going to say something to correct Fred. Fred's going to come back with something again. You're going to say, well, you're still missing this, or now you make me realize that I didn't address this and include this, so I'm including this. And you're going to go back and forth 5 to 20 times before that you feel like you're really getting something that you can sink your teeth into here.
Doug,
yeah.
I just want to share with you an experience that I had.
Okay.
For a long time, WordPerfect had, I don't know whether it's still there or not, because I haven't used it recently, but they had a deal where you could draft a document and have it in there, and you could ask it to analyze a document and tell you at what grade level you were writing, whether it was 5th grade, 11th grade, 3rd month, whatever it is.
Yep.
To see, and the consensus, generally speaking, is that the general public doesn't understand things that are written above the 5th grade, 6-month level.
Okay. I've always been 8th grade, so that surprises me.
And anyway, so I take the explanation of a profit sharing plan that's been approved by the government, and I go through there, and I spent several days trying to simplify the language. When I first put it in there, it was at 11th grade, 9th month.
Okay.
That was the approved one. So they'd missed the target to really communicate with the general public by a long ways.
Yeah.
After all that work of trying to simplify, but also having to include everything that their regulations said you had to have in that document, I got it all the way down to 10th grade, 4th month. 1 year better.
Yeah.
So simplifying this stuff and still meeting the requirements of CMS and a bunch of government hacks who who create the outlines of what has to be communicated is really like trying to walk on a bed of hot coals. I'm not saying AI can't do it. I'm just saying it's a real challenge. And then you have to be sure that you've missed all of the things so that it's not a marketing material that has to be approved.
Exactly. So, Chuck, thank you very much for that, because that's what you just did, is you explained how difficult it is for a human being to do this. You just explained why it was so difficult for the large insurance carriers with all their resources to be able to simplify this information and these products and services so that their market and their clients and customers understood it. You just explained why agents don't want to do it. And maybe they would like to do it, but they feel like they just don't have the capability of doing it. These large language modules, because of the way that they're trained, can do this. You can actually say to this thing, okay, take all of this information that I've just given to you, and I want you to restate it, and I want you to make it shorter. I want it to be 2 paragraphs long or 3 paragraphs long, and I want it to be at a 5th grade reading level, and it will do it. And it is using it knows how the grammar works for 5th graders. It has access to all the linguistic information that you need in order to be able to do this stuff. And it is going to be able to do this. It may not be perfect on the first shot. It may not be perfect on the second shot. But if you keep working with it, it will be able to get it so that you feel confident that you have something, and you'll be able to do it in a fraction of the time that it would have taken you to do it manually, the way that you're describing how it can be done. And you can even say, I want you to talk to me in the language, and you can use a children's author, right? The only children's author that's coming to my mind right now is Beatrice Potter. Would you please state it like Beatrice Potter did? And it can do that type of stuff, right? And it can do it in 2 or 3 minutes, where it would take you hours or days or weeks to come up with satisfaction. This stuff is really amazing. Did I answer your question, Chuck?
Yes, you did. But I mean, I just think there are a lot of challenges with the regulators about what we can actually accomplish with this. I think that if they just turn us loose, we could work wonders with it.
So I think the regulators are pretty well realizing that they're trying to regulate this, but they realize that they can't do much about it. But that doesn't mean they're not going to have the regulations in force. And so even if you can't get the outputs to be just what you want so that it meets the regulation, that's when you have to take it and you have to say, or you come to me and we sit down together and we say, okay, now how do we make sure that this is compliant? And we can do that, right? It's just an additional step that you do above and beyond what Fred the language module is going to be doing. I know you're skeptical, and I'm just not nearly as skeptical as you are on that particular thing, because I don't think
it's okay, Doug. It's the lawyer in me.
Okay. Okay. So, in other words, what Chuck just described is exactly the process, and he just did it in a little bit better way than I'm trying to do it, which is that's how we're actually going to walk this complex information that people don't understand into the kind of information that people do understand. And if you can get to the point where you can do this for individuals, you should be able to get to the point where you can create marketing materials that market yourself, that are going to come up with terminology that's going to be very difficult. Well, it could be easy to duplicate once your competitors see what you're doing. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to find subtle ways of telling people without actually talking about complexity, because there's a taboo around it, right? No one wants to admit that they can't understand complex information or that they're afraid of complex information. So you're trying to work with this system. It's like an expert marketing consultant. It's like an expert lawyer, an expert accountant that you're working with, that has access to all of this special knowledge, and you're trying to apply it with your sense of relevance to a particular situation, and it's just going to accelerate everything. So let me see if I can give you an analogy here that reinforces this a little bit. And I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to encourage you to do something that you know that you're going to do poorly at the beginning, but it's important enough that you need to be willing to do it poorly, knowing that you're going to be climbing a learning curve and that you're going to be doing it better and better the more times you practice it. AI can give you the same access to knowledge as rich people have when they hire consultants, lawyers, and accountants to advise them on their products, right? You now have access to that same kind of information to, I don't know, let's say 80 or 90%. That stuff is available to you right now. The playing field is being leveled for those who can see it and those who are willing to fail a little bit as they learn how to leverage this stuff and to use it. The good news is that those failures will enable you to outcompete those who are afraid of failing and don't even want to try this. Okay. Okay, so let me, I'm down here to just a little bit. Let me give you an actual example here, and I'm going to go through this really fast, but I have to talk on this one because there is a new question that comes from this one. This is, I was reading a financial report on one of the carriers that looks like this was on Cigna. So on one of the carriers that we offer, and I was trying to find out where they were headed and why they were headed, because they're getting out of the business, right? They've sold to Relevance. So in 2025, I believe that we won't have Cigna in Utah. If they decide to stay here, we'll have Relevance that used to be Anthem. And so they're talking about something, as I was reading this, that's called point solution fatigue. That's, you can see that in the left blue column, and you can see the whole paragraph that it came in, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So you can see my question to the this is to Claude, which is one of the large language modules. It's probably, and this week it back then it was one of the leading ones, and it kind of took a back seat for several weeks, and now it's kind of back on top of the heap again this week. So I said, can you please explain, in the middle column there, you can see what I actually wrote. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can see I'm trying to give it enough context, enough sense of relevance that it could go out and figure out how to answer for me. And so then there in the right column is the answer that it came back with. And I thought, that's kind of a cool term. So it says, a point solution is a specific targeted solution that addresses a single problem or need as a standalone telemedicine service, a diabetes management app, or a mental health support program. When I was in the software industry years ago, we would create these really large solutions like WordPerfect that Chuck mentioned. I used to work for WordPerfect. And it got so complex, we had to have customer support people available 24 hours around the clock. People were calling all the time. They didn't understand what was going on. People got tired of these applications that were absolutely huge and where they only used 20% of the functionality and everything, but they had to understand the naming conventions that took into account 100%. And it was just so complex that they got tired of it. And so people came up with these solutions where we're not going to create these large applications the way we always have before. We're going to create small apps, and the apps are going to do one thing. So I'm going to have an app that keeps a track of all my contacts, their name, their address, their telephone number, their email address, and maybe a few points about, their grandkids or their spouses or something like that. It wasn't a huge, complete solution. It was just a little tiny app. And then I have a different app where I do my email, and my email app goes over to my personnel app or my contacts app, and it grabs that information and comes over. And so now I have all of these little apps all over the place. I have them on my phone, I have them on my computer, I have them at work, I have them out on the internet. And people are getting confused now by this because this has created a new kind of complexity. So this was a solution to complexity, and the solution to complexity is now becoming too complex to manage. And so they're going back to where they were before, right? So we're going to ping pong back and forth between these two solution sets that both are prone to over complexity because people don't understand what complexity is and they don't understand what simplicity is. And that's where we are. So I would take a look at that stuff there, that stuff in red there at the bottom, because that's going to be pertinent to answering the question. Okay, we're going to keep on moving. I'm not going to do this. This was also going to be a part where I took about 10 minutes to talk to you guys about this. There is something that's called an AI search engine that acts like a large language module. And I was going to show you how to do that. Can I just ask you, if you guys are interested in this, we can set up a one-on-one, and I can actually go through Perplexity or with Claude or with Microsoft Copilot, whatever solution you would like to use, or you would let me suggest one. And yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you go back to the previous slides quickly, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just let me know when we can go back. Anyway, what I was going to say, I'm not going to show you how Perplexity works. I was going to show you several shots.
Oh, good.
My engaging several shots with Perplexity. If you would like me to do that, I'm willing to do that with you. We can set up a Google Meet or however you want to do it. We just do it one-on-one. Okay, so we need to go over this slide now also, because notice there's writing in red here. So we have another question, another poll question for you here. I'd like you to take a look at this list. I'm just going to go over it real fast. These are according to surveys out there by various marketing people, and these are the concerns that people have with AI. And they're probably concerns that you already have. So the people who were at the beginning of this conversation, where we asked you what your gut level feelings were about AI, and a lot of you were concerned, these are probably some of the concerns that you have. Job losses. For example, I can see those people who are in the knowledge fields, accountants, lawyers, and doctors, and even insurance agents over the next, decade, finding dramatic changes occurring to their industries. Data security. We have more fraud going on now because the fraudsters are using AI to be more persuasive than ever before, and they're being more successful than ever before. Because again, This AI stuff is a double-edged sword. It cuts for benefits, but it also cuts to detriment. Less human interaction. True. You know, all of these concerns are legitimate. I have to acknowledge their accuracy, but I do want to state that it's too late to close the barn door. It's too late to put the genie back in the bottle. AI is here to stay no matter what anyone does, because the increases in productivity and the cost savings are just too rich for society to walk away from. And the rivals of the United States are already fully committed to AI. So even if we have our government say, no, we're not going to do that, we would be putting ourselves underneath the boot of other civilizations. So it doesn't do us any good to ignore it. It's sort of like that risk that's associated with us because it's a double-edged sword. It's perched on the branch above our industry. But the point that I'd like to make here is that in all risk and in all chaos, there's always opportunity. And if you can think about it, and you can actually use the technology that's threatening you, you can have conversations with it to help understand and come up with solutions that will help you manage the risk that's coming from the technology itself. It's kind of crazy. Let me just quickly talk about hallucinations and deep fakes. These are some things that you hear quite a bit. An hallucination is when the system, not deliberately, the system makes a mistake and it gives you bad information. It's because these systems do not have an understanding of what truth is. They don't know what truth is. All they know is what probabilities are. So all of this stuff is done mathematically. It is using linear algebra to go in and analyze grammar and the grammar of all the documents that are out there, and to put them in a mathematical context with each other. It's the relevance. This is how it determines relevance. It puts them in mathematical relationships with each other. But it's based on what's out there and that people have written. So if more people have written, say, that the sky is orange than the sky is blue, it's going to tell you the sky is orange because that's where the probabilities lie, if that makes sense. So we need to figure out a way to address that. I was going to take some time to address it, but I'm not going to have time to do that. Deep fakes, let me talk about those. Deep fakes are when people take these new generative capabilities and they deliberately use them to deceive people. So law enforcement, in a conference that I went to a year ago, was very concerned in that you can actually tell these large language modules to generate images of your enemy committing a crime. You're trying to frame your enemy. You can do that, and law enforcement has a hard time telling just from the image that it's a fake. And law enforcement can say, we believe that you committed a crime, and people can tell these large language modules to generate exculpatory information that gives them an alibi. And law enforcement has a hard time distinguishing just based on that piece of evidence if that evidence is real or not. Okay, so here are some unambiguous yet generic opportunities, and I'm not going to take very much time on this just because I'm running out of time here. I did want to get here because there is, again, more text in red. So there are shortcomings of the general large language modules, hallucinations. And in the worst case scenarios, this is improving all the time. So each time they're coming out with these new language models, they're better and better at eliminating hallucinations. But based on those mathematics and everything that I told you about, that means that as long as we do this stuff the way that we're doing it right now, we're never going to be able to eliminate hallucinations 100%. Because if more people say the sky is orange than the sky is blue, it's always going to tell you that the sky is orange. Some of the shortcomings are it's expensive to train. We gave a presentation a little while ago, and Morgan was talking about the expense. And there are environmentalists who are very concerned about the amount of power from the electric grids that it takes to train these things. Once you train these things on the internet, you create a base. And then what happens after that particular point, these large language modules, they learn by the prompts that you guys put into the system, right? So if you enter a story or something, it learns that and it's able to integrate that with its learning. But it's really hard to go back and say, okay, we're going to do a new snapshot of the internet and we're going to train it all over again. You can't do that every day. It takes months to train these things and huge amounts of power. And so once you do the main training at the very beginning, now you just have to do these incremental trainings every day, and you're never going to have the comprehensive training again just because of the way these things work. That's also why they're having a hard time with the reasoning, though they're getting better and better with its reasoning. You'll be able to, I'm going off into details again. It has no common sense understanding of words. So when it's trained initially, it may see how the word that you're using relates to 100 other words, but you're using it in a way that the word was not trained on. And so sometimes it will give you an answer that you're frustrating because you can see it's not using the word correctly. Real quickly, I remember I had a conversation with something the other day, and I was frustrated. And I just in pique, I actually said, why isn't the rest of the world who's being damaged by the attacks of the Houthis on shipping over by the Suez Canal, why are they just leaving America and a few other countries? Why isn't everybody stepping up and trying to shut this down? And the system came back and said, not everybody is being hurt by it. And I said, would you please explain to me how people are being hurt? And it said to me, well, it is interfering with shipping. It's causing delays to shipping. It's causing the prices to increase in shipping. It's causing problems with the supplies of raw materials. And this is affecting the worldwide economy. And I wrote back and I said, well, you told me that it's not affecting everybody, but then you just gave me facts that say that it is affecting everybody. I interpret those things as it's affecting everybody. And it came back to me and it said, well, I can see your point. It is hurting everybody, but it's not hurting everybody equally. Some people are hurting more than others. And it was almost like talking to a person who was trying to defend their position in an argument. And it was all just because it did not understand the implications of saying that prices are going up and delays are occurring in the supply chain for everybody. It did not see how that would mean that everybody was being affected. So those types of things are still happening out here. Let me just quickly go over the sample utility of the Gen AIs. They are providing context for almost everything that you are going out to. If you have a lack of confidence in your ability to write, well, you can get Grammarly, which is based on AI, or you can just take these free systems and you can put in your email message, your letter to your son, or whatever, and you can ask it to punctuate it and make sure that it's clear. You can ask it to change the tone. You can ask it to make it so that it's more sympathetic, more empathetic, more professional, and it will do it. It knows how to do all this stuff because it's connected to all the linguistic search that helps it to do that stuff. It can take and summarize dense writing as clear summaries, pattern recognition and classification, translation among just about all the natural languages that are out there. It can generate videos and artwork for you. It can answer the phones, and it can chat with your clients. Okay, and I'm not going to do this one. And I'm not going to do this one. This is a framework that I think that we as Medicare agencies are going to need to have if these large language modules are going to become the servants that we believe that they can. Okay, Morgan, would you take just 5 minutes here and talk a little bit about this, and then we'll call it a day.
Yes. Okay. Would you mind going to the next slide, Doug? Oh, did you want me to talk about?
I just wanted you to talk a little bit about images and videos for a sec.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So there are quite a few different options. My favorite, personally, I am biased, is the Adobe Firefly. You can go into Adobe Firefly and you can put in a sentence or a phrase of any kind. You can really put anything. It's just the same as if you're using a chatbot, but you can use it to make images. You can use it to make videos. So this makes what Doug was saying earlier with the kind of deep fakes and stuff, that it can be concerning, but I think that for our use, it could be kind of beneficial if you are wanting to use it for just creating an image. If you have a website and you want to add an image of somebody sitting at a desk, you can do that. All you have to type in is, please, or you don't have to say please, but I usually do. Add in an image for like of an older gentleman sitting at a desk next to his computer, and then it'll show a few different options for you, and then from there you can kind of change it up. So you can say, well, I didn't really like the lighting, so you can say make it in the early morning, and then if you didn't really love that, you can add in also add a little girl next to him laughing, like anything like that. You can keep adding and adding and adding and creating until you have the image that you're interested in. You can also, if you want it to look like a form of like an actual picture, you can say, a specific type of photograph that you would like. You can also make it look like art if you would like. So if you kind of want it to be a little bit more impressionistic, you can ask it to do that, and it will change the whole look of it. So these are kind of fun to play around with, even if you're not super interested in using AI. It might be a fun one to kind of get into so that you can kind of get a feel for it and for how it works. Yes, that's true. Like Doug is saying, Integrity has added AI to Medicare Center. So if you are not using Medicare Center yet, I know we've talked about it quite a bit. So please look into it. Call me. We can go on do a one-on-one training with it. But yeah, they have AI that they already use on theirs to help assist you. So it is very awesome.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to go to the next thing here. Morgan.
Okay, so I'm going to launch one last poll. So just so everyone knows, all of the polls have been launched as of right now. So if you haven't already, please go to the polls and make sure you answer all of the polls. It looks like for the most part, we have a decent amount who have answered all of them. Just make sure you answer all of them in order to get credit. But like I was saying earlier, I'll kind of run through it again. What you do if you want to go to the polls is you go to the activities button that's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's a triangle and a square and a circle. Once you click on that, it will have a little pop up and you'll click on the one that says polls. From there, you'll see all of the polls and you can scroll down to see all of them to make sure you get them all. But there are 8, so just make sure that you answer all 8, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to be sticking around here for a few more minutes. I'd like to encourage you, because I do talk a lot, I was not able to finish everything that I wanted to say to you. So if you're interested in this and you think that it would be beneficial to you personally or to you as a business owner, please contact me. I'm willing to spend time with you so that you feel comfortable with this. And can I just point out, this stuff is going to make doing AHIP and other types of product certifications easier. If you'd like to know how that works, give me a call and let's talk about this. I would like to get it so that this becomes something that you feel comfortable enough with to start engaging with, even if you fail a few times, because anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. And I'm a firm believer in that. So we're going to stick around. If you have questions here today, or if you want to set up an appointment, please feel free to stick around. And I sure appreciate your attention. And thank you so much for coming.